Good morning. In my life at Cincinnati Children's every day, I report to the chair and CEO, so I spend most of my time thinking about what will answer questions fast enough for a health system to maintain its eminence, but what will at the same time offer advances in new knowledge. So I appreciate, Joe, the tension that you feel every day at PICCornet. I'm delighted to be here and speak on behalf of the Improved Care Network. I am not directing the Improved Care Network. There are several people in the room who've worked on the network. Funded by a transformational grant from the NIH, Improved Care Now was begun to bring patients, families, and providers together to co-produce a system that would transform care for children with inflammatory bowel disease. And I'm speaking on behalf of all of them. Now currently funded by PCORI, and actually funded by member organizations. Improved Care Now has physicians, nurses, patients, and kids designing the system that they are interested in getting their care from. These models of how to think about it are really the basis of the Improved Care Now. The slide on your top left hand attributes the requirement of end-to-end research for improving outcomes for kids, starting at the basic, going to the delivery system, addressing the gaps in quality, and then returning back to the basic science to answer more therapeutic questions. On the right-hand side is the schema that is a simple schema that we use for all of our networks, standardizing care and achieving the best possible practice, the best current outcome on reliable delivery of current evidence, reducing the signals, reducing the variation, reducing the noise, enabling us now to go back and answer more important questions with more embedded results, going back to look at trials at that point in time, going back to the basic science laboratory, in many cases to answer questions of compliance or not. At the bottom is the diagram that Chris Forrest developed that outlines the framework for the Improved Care Now network, starting with patients and clinicians, creating a learning engine at the point of care where data is collected into a standardized EMR, and reports distributed back to support and highlight variation in practices, resulting then in improved practice, a collaborative learning model that enables everybody to come to in a transparent way to improve the system, patient outcomes collected at a single point of care that determine what happens, a single registry function, and IRBs that enable this work to happen pretty well. And then on the basis of that, beginning to embed more classic research. So a fundamental principle of the Improved Care Now network is data in one, data collected at one point in time, enabling people to use it both for QI and for research. The data is collected systematically, collected carefully, using the EMR to reduce the burden of data collection and to really be able to enable us to have the data that is both pragmatic but also important. So the importance of patient-reported outcomes, the importance of clinical outcomes. This reliable element of streamlined data collection and data entry, but fed back to the clinicians and to the patients to enable them to use it in their daily work, is what contributes to reliable critical data collection. This shows the graphs of the percent of the population in the registries and the data completion that enables us to be able to use this data for research subsequently. Using improvement science, engaging everyone in the redesign and co-production, implementing reliable evidence-based practice, and Ed Wagner's model of the chronic care system results in fairly rapid improvement in remission rates. This is remission rates across the network, and now those remission rates are up above 80%, 63 care centers, over 20,000 patients now, and 35% of all children with inflammatory bowel disease. This then allows us, this is a report of pre-visit planning, which is one of the important factors in determining improvement in chronic illness, and data for each center is displayed. This is transparent, enabling centers not only to work individually, but to learn from each other in a very collaborative fashion, combining improvement with research. Two types of research are enabled by this process of what Peter Margolis will call reagent level practice, data collected at the point of care, data collected and used for the purposes of research and improvement, data that is transparent and reliable, both research on networks itself, what motivates people, what are the factors that make people contribute this, what does it look like in the models of co-production, who are the users of the system and what are their goals and needs, but also research using networks as a high-throughput clinical system asking what treatment works for whom. This is a factorial design looking at components of the Wagner model, pre-visit planning, population health, and self-management support across different sites, and looking at the impact of it on clinical outcomes, in this case, remission rate or steroid-free remission rate. It is also possible using this to replicate and to conduct comparative effectiveness studies. This is Chris Forrest's work from the network, looking at this data in this network, in fact, replicating, if you will, trials that have been done more on the adult side, with a pretty big disadvantage in kids that sometimes many of these trials are really adapted from the adult comparative effectiveness data, not enabling pediatric-specific comparative effectiveness data to happen. This is using these patients in this network to look at clinical remission and steroid-free remission on the left and right side of your slide, looking at patients that had this treatment initiated to patients that were not initiated. So a pragmatic trial on the basis of extraordinary, well-collected data and a highly reliable process of care. This data is very similar, I think, to the data that was conducted in a pretty large and expensive way, I think, on the adult side. At a single site at Cincinnati, these kinds of remission rates allow us to continuously improve the system, but also allow us to go back and answer the question of the 500 children with IBD. When you get to remission rates of 80%, who are the 100 kids who are not doing well, enabling us to ask the question about their personalized learning systems. How are their symptom scores working? This is a personalized learning system designed to allow kids to keep track of their own symptoms and to understand the relationship between perhaps diet changes and what they're doing and what happens in terms of their own learning. Showing this in a single study, this is data from Heather Kaplan and Peter and others' work creating this learning system model, but also allows us to answer the question that when we get to standardized care and when we get to the best care currently possible, what do we need to go back and answer? So a telehealth adherence trial in this population on understanding how to improve self-adherence for children with chronic illness, a trial looking at biomarkers to predict the failure rates for sustained remission, maybe two examples of the kind of studies that are possible going from bench to bedside, if you will, if such a laboratory is created. So I think I've described a distributed learning system model in which all stakeholders are engaged in advancing the health of children and in co-developing the system, not a system that is developed by others for them, but a system in which they help to design what sorts of studies need to be done, what are the important questions that they have as patients that need to be answered, that this database can answer, a measurable impact on the health of participating children. A very important goal for me in my role is to reduce the time between generation of new knowledge and its application, which of course is the compelling and vexing problem in healthcare. Data research that we have that's not applied, and when it's not applied reliably. A lab to prototype and test these innovations and to generate new evidence faster. This comparative effectiveness trial that Chris and his colleagues did helps us understand and helps us convince the colleagues in these networks across the country that this is in fact important and possible to do. In pediatrics, we have no choice but to engage in such networks. Pediatric diseases are rare. It is difficult for us to learn at a single site what needs to happen. This view of integrating research and quality improvement is a fundamental premise for us at Cincinnati Children's and for the large number of pediatric hospitals that engage with us. We have about 120 organizations currently and 390 sites of care, including a network for safety. We continuously have requests for more such networks. There are outcomes. It has proven value. People subscribe to this work, Joe, as you described, and innovative research and patient engagement, advanced informatics, and others that you will hear from others. But importantly, I think for these health systems that have continued to participate in these networks, there is a strategic commitment from the boards, from the chairs, and chiefs and CEOs, understanding that these networks offer us the best chance to rapidly bring new knowledge to the bedside to improve the outcomes for kids. Thank you. think I've caught you up.